Hello, vinyl community. On this episode, I am joined once again by Tim Durling from Tim's Vinyl Confessions. And we have previously discussed our AC/DC CD collection and our Rush CD collections, but I've asked Tim to join me here today so we can show off our Queen vinyl collection. So welcome, Tim.
Hi, Jeff.
Hi. And if you've seen Tim's channel, you know Tim is a huge Queen fan. He's got an extensive, not only vinyl collection, but he's got Queen CDs, Queen cassettes, and he's got Queen 8-tracks. So if you're interested in seeing more of his collection, make sure that you check out his channel. And Tim, do you want to talk a little bit about how you got into Queen and what started off your collection?
Sure. Thank you, Jeff. Yeah, well, I mean, I grew up born in 74, so I think like a lot of kids my age, Another One Bites the Dust was probably the first Queen song we ever heard. You couldn't escape it. It was on the radio everywhere in 1980. I remember I had a cousin that had the 45 of Another One Bites the Dust, and I remember listening to that over and over again. And then I'd flip it over and play it was another song on the other side. It was actually Don't Try Suicide. So I played that. Probably the first time I ever heard the word suicide. But and then, not really much to say except remember the songs as they came out, like Radio Gaga, and then seeing the videos for like One Vision and Kind of Magic. I didn't actually get into Queen until 1992, which also that's the same year that Wayne's World came out, of course, and Bohemian Rhapsody. But it was around that same time, but it really wasn't because of that. That was just kind of a fun coincidence. Some friends of mine that I knew, we were at somebody's house, and their dad had a pretty extensive 70s era vinyl collection. And we were listening to A Night at the Opera, and I just couldn't get over how different each song sounded from the one before it. And then, of course, there was a Freddie Mercury Concert for Life with Metallica, Def Leppard, Extreme. Like a lot of my favorite bands were coming out and saying, hey, we liked Queen. So I got into them pretty hardcore around that time. And by the year's end, I had all the CDs.
Okay. Yeah, I remember when I was in grade school hearing We Will Rock You, We Are the Champions. And then the big single that blew up, obviously, for most of us was Another One Bites the Dust. And then Queen's always been on my musical periphery in terms of the style of music that I enjoy. But I really had just kind of their greatest hits collections until I saw the Bohemian Rhapsody movie. And then I was like, I really got to take this band more seriously. I got to start collecting more Queen. So I kind of rounded out my CD collection. I, filled out most of my vinyl collection. And that's what we're going to talk about today. And Queen's first couple of albums, well, I'll say at least their first two albums, I think most people that at least have a casual interest in Queen aren't all that familiar with, because they tend to be heavier. They're a little more a combination of progressive rock and art rock. And so these are probably, I would imagine, for most people collecting Queens, some of the last albums that they actually discover or get into. Do you want to show your debut Queen album?
Yeah, it's funny. The first two Queen albums also, there's no big singles really off of either of them. So that has another thing to do with it. I mean, Sheer Heart Attack isn't all that well known, but most people know Killer Queen. That's another story. Before I show you the first album, I want to show you something else that is from Record Store Day 2011. This is a reproduction of the very first Queen single and the first song on the first Queen album, Keep Yourself Alive. Probably the best known song from the album. Great tune. And you can see this is a reproduction, but it's got the 40th anniversary crest here. And it actually says on the back, sleeve based on the original Portuguese 7-inch, July 1973. So this is just kind of a cool little thing. I don't have much for singles, but so there's the Keep Yourself Alive and the B-side. Another heavy one. Both songs written by Brian May, of course, son and daughter. The heavy Queen songs tended to be, but weren't always written by Brian. Mm-hmm. So here's the first one. Here's the first album. 1973. This is a Canadian edition on Elektra Records. It's not a gatefold. I'm guessing in a lot of countries, especially in the UK, it probably is a gatefold. But
mine's not either.
No. Well, because if you've got a US one, they're probably very similar, except for basically the addresses of the. And this looks like to be a reissue from maybe the early 80s because it's got the maple leaf up here.
Okay.
A lot of funny, like fun pictures of them on the back. One that I always noticed is these two pictures of Brian May dressed up in a penguin suit, which they would revisit that many years later in their video for I'm Going Slightly Mad. Now, the copy I have doesn't have a lyric sleeve. Does yours have any sort of personalized inner sleeve?
This is the inner sleeve that I have. And,
Oh, okay.
you know, it's one of those sleeves where other albums on this label that you might be interested in.
Wow.
Ray Charles, Steppenwolf, Three Dog Night, James Gang, John Lee Hooker, a lot of blues stuff on here.
Actually, that's not even an actual, that's an ABC one.
Okay.
Or MCA. So that's not even, that wouldn't have even come with it because it would have had Electra artists on it, which is kind of fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's curious. But now okay. I think our records look the same. They've got an old Electra label with a butterfly on it, which is kind of funny because the butterfly's with the Chrysalis label used. And it's the old E Electra logo. Like in the 80s, it changed to the red and black one, a lot of us know. But yeah, I think our records look the same there.
Yeah, all my I've got some Doors albums that have that exact same
Yeah, they're an Electra. Yeah. So second Queen album, 1974. A lot of people don't know the album maybe, but they know the cover. It's so iconic. It's basically the Bohemian Rhapsody pose at the beginning of the video. Here it is first. And it's interesting, the copy you have, you can almost see where the background, it's like different from it's like they reproduced it somehow. Is that like a reissue?
This is the Hollywood record.
Oh,
reissue,
that's why.
So that's probably why. You can definitely see the background, the blacker.
Yeah. So this is a gatefold like yours is. This is the back cover. And it was basically the side white, side black. Like side white was a lighter, side black was a sort of a heavier, darker side. There's some of the heaviest Queen songs ever on here. Probably their heaviest, Ogre Battle, that guitar riff, and that was written by Freddie. So this is also a Canadian version on Electra, and yeah, gatefold's the same. So there's the white side of the band, and just a little bit of credits there.
And the white side is mostly Brian May compositions, and the black side is mostly Freddie compositions. I think that was intentional.
Yeah, and like Roger Taylor got one song in there, The Loser in the End. John Deacon hadn't started writing yet. So yeah, my record looks just like the first one with the, and what's yours look like?
Okay. It's a custom label, probably because it's an issue, but.
Yeah, definitely. Try and get that light so we can see that's just like the first album.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, and also, it's not the sleeve, but it's a single sheet that has all the lyrics to the songs.
Okay.
So yeah, it's like a single sheet of paper, and that's not the last time that I think they would do that.
Right. Yeah, that album was, like you say, 1974, and then Sheer Heart Attack is also a pretty heavy album as well. And in fact, I think a lot of speed metal bands credit Queen for kind of starting that whole genre with Stone Cold Crazy. As brief a song as that is, I mean, it's intense and it doesn't let up. And then you've got Brighton Rock was that John Deacon on vocal? Who's on Brighton Rock? Who does the vocal on that?
It's all Freddie. It's all Freddie alternating between that high falsetto and the lower one. In concert, Roger would sing the high part.
Roger, yeah.
It's all Freddie. John Deacon didn't sing, but the highest stuff, that's all Roger.
Okay.
Yeah, Sheer Heart Attack, the second album, like when bands would put out 2 albums a year, also 1974. And I got another Canadian edition here on Electra. This time they didn't use the logo, which is interesting. Yeah. And this is a Canadian edition on Electra Records. Like I said, it's not a gatefold. Certain amount of ring wear on here. I kind of like that though. It kind of gives it its charm. And once again, the record is the same Electra label they were using. And this came with this poster. It's got pictures of the band on it, and the lyrics and credits are on the other side. And yours probably reproduces that
Yep.
as well. Yes.
And then mine's a Hollywood reissue, and so it's another custom label
Yep.
with a Sheer Heart Attack logo on there. And this is the 180 gram vinyl. So it's probably also a bit heavier than the one that you've got. But yeah, there's the poster in there as well. So pretty faithful in every other respect to that original album. And then the big one.
Yeah.
November 1975, A Night at the Opera.
Yep. Yeah, mine's a US copy on Elektra, and just a fantastic album from start to finish. Love the artwork. Freddie Mercury created this Queen crest, as it would become known, by basically combining the astrological symbols of each of the members of the band. And this is embossed, so it stands up a little bit, like it's raised from the rest of it. I love the calligraphy there. I love the back cover where it's written to be like a playbill on Elektra once again. And this is a gatefold. Lyrics, credits, not a lot of credits, mostly lyrics. Of course, this has Bohemian Rhapsody and also had You're My Best Friend. Those were the two best known singles off of this one. But as far as heavy songs, you got Death on Two Legs, which is almost a prog hard rocker. It's got different parts in it. The Prophet song is an epic song written by Brian May. I'm in Love with My Car is kind of a psychedelic heavy song sung by Roger Taylor. And before I knew that there other people in Queen sang, I remember thinking, boy, Freddie sounds different on that song. And then 39 is an acoustic song because of a folky song that Brian May sings. It's just amazing. I mean, admittedly, at this point in time, we've all heard Bohemian Rhapsody a million times, but the whole album, listen to the rest of the album. It's so good. It's just got something. It literally has something for everyone on this album. So that's the record itself. I've just got a plain white sleeve and still using the same Elektra label.
Yeah. This one is another reissue. It's got a custom label on the one side. You've got the Queen logo, and you've got the crest, and you've got the song titles, and then on the back you've just got the Queen crest without. And is yours a glossy finish?
No, mine's kind of a matte finish.
Okay, all right. Just I wasn't sure about
it's
that.
Embossed, but it's not glossy.
Okay.
Yeah. I also have this, which I think was a Black Friday deal. This was a gift. Bohemian Rhapsody, a reproduction of the single. And this is a 2015 issue. It's on Virgin EMI, so it's like it's a reissue. So it's Bohemian Rhapsody on one side and I'm in Love with My Car on the other. I don't have this open, so that's the only other thing I have from the Night at the Opera era.
Okay, and then following with the Marx Brothers theme for their next album, which came out in December of 1976. This was A Day at the Races. And this is mine's not embossed. I don't know if yours is.
Mine looks pretty shiny compared to the Night at the Opera one. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mine's a US copy on Elektra again. It's almost a mirror image, light to dark from A Night at the Opera. It's not quite the same photo, but it's the same characters drawn. Mm-hmm. This is a gatefold, laid out exactly the same, right down to the font they used to print the lyrics. Yep, photo of the band on stage and all the lyrics. Somebody to Love was the big hit off of this one. This also has Tie Your Mother Down, one of the, like a fun Queen rock song. It's also got another, it's kind of like the Prophet song. A lot of the songs on here I find kind of echo back to A Night at the Opera. And the song White Man on here kind of reminds me of the Prophet song. And there's a lot where you can, like the Millionaire Waltz on here sounds to me like they were trying to do Bohemian Rhapsody again. And even though it's a good album, it's not one of my favorites. Might be my least favorite of their albums from the 70s, but it's still really good. And the sleeve with this is actually a hard cardboard sleeve. Yeah. Looks the same there. And it's got the crest, Queen, A Day at the Races. And curious to see what your record looks like. So we might have the same copy.
Yeah, we probably do.
Mine's a GE-101. Is that the serial number on yours?
Yep, 60-101-ASP.
Yeah, it's A and B. Yeah, so
Yep.
101 is the, yeah, cool.
Yeah, no, Tie Your Mother Down was another big one on here. I think those are the ones, Somebody to Love and Tie Your Mother Down were the ones that found their way onto some of the greatest hits compilations that were to come. And then for me, another big one, News of the World, which was released in October of 1977. And got that great cover designed by the science fiction illustrator, who they actually commissioned to do the cover after seeing one of, I believe it was a magazine cover or something that he had done the art for.
Frank
Break
Frank
or something
Kelly
like that.
Frank Kelly Freas was his name.
Okay.
And yeah, it was an old science fiction. I think it was called Forbidden Planet or something like that. And the drawing was basically this robot picking up a human, and the caption said, "Daddy, fix it."
Mhm.
He had killed it by mistake. He thought it was a toy. So basically, they just substituted the band members. Anyone who's ever watched the show Family Guy, this is the album cover. There's one episode where a running gag that Stewie is scared to death of this robot, this album cover, and someone actually asked Seth MacFarlane, I think it was on Reddit, said, "Okay, I got to know, did you have an irrational fear of the News of the World album cover as a kid?" And he just said, "Oh yes." So I think that's a lot of fun. The episode was called Killer Queen, and I like the inner sleeve too. This is just awesome.
Yeah.
Reaching down, all these people are running. This is a Canadian copy on Elektra, and of course, I mean, I'll be honest with you. I usually start this at the third track because I've heard "We Will Rock You" and "We Are the Champions" so many times. They're great. They're fantastic. But every sporting event, they're just part of pop culture. Which is, I mean, Queen have a few songs that are like that. And if you can get that stage where you've got that song that the fans need never listen to again, you've really made it. I
Mhm.
mean, you might say "Thunderstruck" is like that. "Don't Stop Believing." Like, if a band can get to that level, you've really penetrated the public culture. But this is probably, I'm going to say, the rawest sounding Queen album. It's got Sheer Heart Attack is just a blistering, heavy, heavy, heavy song. It's Late is a great, majestic, heavy rocker, again, courtesy of Brian May. I always really like Fight from the Inside. That's a Roger Taylor song. It's kind of a heavy funk song. He sings it. Uh, Sleeping on the Sidewalk, that could be like a ZZ Top song. That's just like a blues shuffle done by Brian May. It's very different sounding from what you'd expect from a Queen album, although you can absolutely tell it's it's a Queen album. Like, there's no mistaking it. Get Down, Make Love's another heavy one. Actually, Nine Inch Nails did a version of that.
They did, yeah. That
Uh,
was a B side that they recorded. They covered that on the B
yeah,
side of Sin. That same.
yeah.
Hmm.
And the inner sleeve, yep, looks like yours looks glossy. Mine is not.
Yeah, this is the another reissue.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Oh,
So just a one photo of the band, and there's very little credits on this one. And once again, it's still the same Elektra logo. Now, yeah, that's got the Day at the Races crest on it, which is interesting.
yeah, yep. So they carried that over. I guess there wasn't. I don't know. They could have made a custom label with art.
They could have just used the robot's head or something
Right.
like that. Yeah.
Yeah. The other piece of vinyl that I have to go along with this one is it's just I've got the single for "We Are the Champions," "We Will Rock You," and
That's cool. That's cool.
yeah. The single itself is beat up, but I like it just for the picture sleeve. I don't really care how
Yeah.
the vinyl sounds.
Yeah. The only time it really matters to me about that is when the B side is something that's not on any of the records.
Right.
Yeah.
So 1978, November of 1978, Queen tends to release a lot of albums in the fall, right before the Christmas season. And the
Yeah, I
next
never really thought about that until you started saying that it was September, October, November. Um, yeah, really interesting. And this is one of my favorites. This is one of
Jazz.
my favorites. Jazz. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mine's a Canadian edition. When I bought this used, someone had taped the hype sticker to it, so I just left it there. So it's got English and French on it. It just says includes bicycle race, fat bottom girls, and a 4-color poster of the start of the nude bicycle race. My copy does not have the poster. I've seen the poster. It's inside the CD. Back cover is like sort of the mirror image,
Yeah,
kind of like they did with Queen 2. I
right,
like it. Like it's. I really, really like it. It's got. This has got so many great songs on it. Also, down at the bottom on both sides, you've got the girls riding the bikes.
right.
And this, I love this gatefold. To me, this is just the coolest gatefold. They're just surrounded. They're in studio. They're surrounded by instruments, just kind of kicking back. I mean, Roger Taylor's, sitting back. Freddie's like on the piano. John Deacon's just chilling over here. Brian May's waving. He's got his, with all these guitars here, he's got his red special. Credits are here. Yeah, I love this album. This is a great, 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 great album.
Yeah, no, it's very cool. And then I don't know if you, yep.
Yep. And on the back just has, yep. Yeah, yours is glossy, mine's not. Is yours a reissue?
Nope, this is just a regular,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, so this is the first time that there was some customization, which is weird because they were big before this. But yeah, they've actually got a customized label, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, it took them extraordinarily long to get their own custom label finally, but
You'd think after a night at the opera, from then on, from the day at the races on, they would have, but
yeah, exactly. One of the cool things I like more of that jazz, which is almost kind of, it reprises several of the songs on there. I think that's very cool.
I love Dead on Time, Mustafa. I mean, now, like Don't Stop Me Now it was a big hit in the UK back then. It wasn't a big hit at all. I think it peaked at number 79 in the States. And I don't think it charted at all in Canada. Now, most people, that's the best known song on this album. It's gained a new life, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. Let Me Entertain You is great.
Oh yeah.
Just so many.
It's just great. Like this variety on it, but there's some seriously heavy songs on there too. And it's got a great production. It was the last time they worked with Roy Thomas Baker. And I just think they went out with a bang and they just threw everything against the wall and it all stuck.
Yep. Yeah, it worked great. And a great way to close out the 70s for sure.
Yeah.
And then Queen came out with a live album. This is
Live Killers. Yeah.
Yeah.
First live album. Mine's a Canadian copy on Elektra, a little ring wear on here. It's got the maple leaf up here, so it might be a little later reissue. This is a great album. This shows you that they could take this material, as complicated as it was, reproduce it live, except of course the midsection of Bohemian Rhapsody, which they would always just play the tape, leave the stage, come back in for the heavy part. We all know that story. Cool collage of pictures. Yeah. And what I like, the vinyl itself, it's on 2 records. One's got a green label with, and this is the first one. This is where the little write-up starts. And the record itself, it's got, so there's a picture of Freddie on side 1, yeah. Side 2, picture of Brian May. And then, of course, you've got the red side. It's just got a plain red sleeve. Then the continuation of the little write-up that's inside the album. And so it's got Roger Taylor and John Deacon. And if you're really got a really keen eye, you'll notice that those pictures appear in their original form somewhere on the photo collage that's inside that gatefold. You'll find each of those 4 pictures.
Yeah, it's a nice little Easter egg to have as part of that. But yeah, and you can definitely tell, like, John Deacon's got the 80s haircut going on in those pictures. And
yeah,
Freddie's got like a shorter shag that he's got right now. So, they're definitely a band. And, I like all the different eras that they've got represented here. Pretty cool. But yeah, great live album, great representation of, all their eras dating back, and really the close of an era, with the 70s ending. And I mean, Queen would get heavy again, but they would start to, I think, in keeping with some of Freddie Mercury's taste, as they were developing more into kind of, clubs,
Yeah.
club
Yeah.
beats, electronic, disco
Yeah.
influences were coming to the fore.
And all of these guys, they were all like, genius composers. So they would try the new technology as soon as it came out. I mean, they'd write with drum machines, and one of the biggest hits from the 80s was written on a drum machine. So, but we'll get to that when we get to the right album.
Mhm.
So the next one is, other than the greatest hits, is their single biggest selling album. It's their single biggest selling studio album. You might think it's A Night at the Opera, and I'm sure that one's up there. But all over the world, the biggest international success for Queen was this, The Game from 1980. And yeah, your copy's got a little ring wear on it. Mine not so bad. I've got it. Mine's a Canadian copy on Elektra. Mine's not shiny like yours though.
Yeah,
That's
this
really
is
cool.
almost like a mirror. You can see your face.
Yeah, mine's a Canadian copy. You can tell by the maple leaf there. And this album was preceded, I think, in late '79. They released Crazy Little Thing Called Love as a standalone single, and it became a #1 song. And so they went right into the studio and did the album. Another One Bites the Dust came off of this one. So 2 #1 songs from this album. I really like this album. Some longtime Queen fans started to drift here. I really like this album. Not that, I wasn't a Queen fan leading up to it. I was too little, but it's definitely different. It's definitely more commercially accessible for, if you were going to play an album for, say, well, what is a Queen album for me to listen to? I'd say this one. I wouldn't send them back to Sheer Heart Attack or Night at the Opera, because it might be kind of, whoa, like what's that? This is your entry point, I think. If you like this, you want to explore further, there's a lot more. But I mean, Dragon Attack, that's a great, heavy, groovy song again, courtesy of Brian May. I always wanted to hear Extreme cover Dragon Attack. I thought they would have just killed it on that. I like the song Roger has on here, Rocket Crime Jive. It's kind of it's kind of new wavy, but it's kind of old style rock and roll too. He and Freddie both sang on that one. Save Me is one of my favorite Queen ballads. It's just a great, great album all the way through. Inner Sleeve. Let's get the 4 photos of the band. Of course, Freddie looks way different now. He's cut his hair. He's grown his mustache. This is pretty much what the band would look like for most of the 80s from here on in. Brian May's the only one that kept his hair. God love him. He still has his hair. It's all gray, but it's all his. He's just kind of ageless. Not much for credits inside here. And the record itself, I guess you could call it a custom label, but it's really not much to speak of. Yeah, it's just so yours must be a US Elektra copy, and mine's a Canadian one.
Yeah.
And I've got the single to show you from this album. I don't have the actual sleeve. I don't think it had a picture sleeve, but this is a Canadian single for Play the Game, and it had the red Elektra that they would have used. And the B-side is one of a handful of songs that never made Queen albums. It's called A Human Body, and it was written by Roger Taylor, sung by Roger Taylor too. If you've got there are a lot of the reissues of The Game on CD has this one, not the 1991 Hollywood issue for some reason. I think it's the 2011 one that I have that's got the bonus disc of material, and Human Body is one of them. It's a cool little song. Mm-hmm. So yeah, 1980 was a big year. What do you got there? Which that looks like another.
This is the Another One Bites the Dust single.
Yep.
And then it's got Don't Try Suicide.
Yep.
You referred to that earlier.
I'm very familiar with that pair of songs. Yeah, probably one just as much as the other, because I just play one, play it again. I probably scratched it all to heck.
Well, I
can't imagine at 6 years old I was too careful.
Well, I scratched it because we played it backwards. Another One Bites the Dust, because
that's right. It's supposed to say smoke marijuana or something.
Yeah, it's fun to smoke marijuana.
Yeah.
So I ruined the grooves that way. I forgot to show when we were covering jazz. I got the Fat Bottom Girls.
Oh, cool.
Also there, and
that's got the sort of personalization with the logo anyway.
Yeah, and this has a bicycle race.
Yeah, that's very cool. So yeah, 1980 was a busy year for them. I mean, they're obviously at their peak, at least their first peak. I'd argue Queen are bigger now than ever, but during their lifetime. And so they were commissioned to provide the music to the film adaptation of Flash, Flash Gordon. This is actually not the easiest thing to find. This is not the easiest record to find. Mine, I think it was a cutout copy. It's got a hole punch through it. And that's got a Canadian copy. It's on Elektra Records. The Maple Leaf up there. That's Sam Jones as Flash Gordon. I've watched the movie. I actually have it on DVD. It's really, really cheesy, but it's fun. All the music is Queen. And it came with a cardboard sleeve. There's Max von Sydow as Ming the Merciless. And it's got a lot of titles on here. Some of them are very, very short. So it's got the cast of the movie here. I forgot Timothy Dalton was in this movie. And then it's got the song titles here and the credits here. So this isn't something I throw on. I do like Flash's theme, and I really like The Hero, which is the only other actual song on here. Both Brian May songs. The Hero is really, really like jaggedly rocking. And the record itself has customized logo. Flash Gordon logo on it. Yeah, that's what they were up to in 1980.
Yeah, I was at a record store yesterday and they had the reissue, the Hollywood Records reissue, and they wanted $28 for it. And I'm like, I don't like it that much. Someday I'll find a cheaper copy, but I mean, it's fine. It is Queen music. It's got some dialogue and whatnot from the movie interspersed through it.
Yeah.
If you like Queen, if you're a big Queen fan, you'll still find enough to enjoy on that.
Yeah, I can't remember the last time I listened to the Flash Gordon soundtrack, but for me, I had to have it. So
yeah.
So I think what happened then, I mean, they took the perfect time to collect their greatest hits. And there are a lot of different albums that have come out over the years called Queen's Greatest Hits, but the first one came out in 1981. I've got the Canadian version. This is on Elektra Records, and it's got 13 songs on it. The track listings differed in some other parts of the country or other parts of the world. For instance, Under Pressure came out as a single and was included on Greatest Hits. It wasn't included on the UK's version of Greatest Hits. That's just one of the differences. And this is also one of the only 3 albums that Elektra made CDs for US sale. This one, The Game, and News of the World, none of which I have, all of which I'd love to, because there's such a small period when they started making CDs while Queen were still on Elektra. And it's just one of those, as a collector, it would just be really, really cool to come across one of those. I'm perfectly happy with the Hollywood reissues and the EMI versions that I have, but it would be cool to find the US one. And it was a really cool inner sleeve that came with this that's got the songs and points to what album they came from, a little bit of information about each song. And on this, so you see Under Pressure is kind of by itself. It's not linked to any album at this point. And on the bottom corner, it advertises Greatest Flicks, a video cassette of Queen's films, now available from video outlets and major record stores. They're videos. They didn't really know what to call them back then. And the record itself looks very cool. Just continuing the theme from the front cover.
I love when they do that, when they include the pictures of the albums on the inner sleeve, just because for some people, especially if you're buying a greatest hits, chances are you're buying it because you don't have the other albums. And that's a great gateway to see, oh, well, I really like the songs off of Night at the Opera, or really like the songs off of Jazz, or, whatever it might be.
And before the internet, like younger people, it's hard to explain. You just didn't have that ready access to all that information. When I first got the Best of Kansas on vinyl, it had all of the other albums, and I didn't have them all at that point. I didn't even know what they looked like. So it's one thing to know what they're called, but to know what they look like, so you can, when you're digging through, there it is. If you just didn't know what it looked like, it just really helped. It was just one of those things that really helped. So.
Yeah, when they reissued that album, Hollywood Records on vinyl, it's on 2 discs, which is one of the reasons why I don't have it. I think I don't know how necessary it was to do that, since obviously it fit on one record before, and now
that's one of my pet peeves. That's, to me, I tell you, these record labels, I'd buy an awful lot more new vinyl, even reissues, if they weren't so expensive. And you're right, they don't need to be. When you get down to when you listen to 3 songs and you got to flip a record over, and obviously they didn't have to do that. It sounded just fine. That's, as a matter of fact, Queen's Greatest Hits was an album that Joe Elliott mentioned when they did Hysteria, when Def Leppard did Hysteria. That's something like 63 minutes long. And you're only supposed to put about 60 minutes of music on vinyl. But he said Queen's Greatest Hits was a long record. So I talked to Brian May, said, how did you press your record? And he said, if it's good enough for Queen, it's good enough for us. Yep. So that was sort of a benchmark. And as a matter of fact, Queen's Greatest Hits in the UK, I think, had 17 songs on it. So it was even longer.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm going to wait till I find an original copy of that. I'm not going to.
Yeah. You will. The one will pop up somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah. So now probably the most controversial album in Queen's entire catalog that was released in May of 1982. And we're talking about this gem.
Hot Space. Yeah.
Hot Space.
And listen, I mean, yeah, it's generally, this one and A Kind of Magic are generally considered to be Queen's worst albums, but even the worst Queen album is still a Queen album. It's still got moments of brilliance on it. Whatever it was they did on here, they meant it. You know, it was never just phoned in, I don't think. It's just basically it comes down to not be liking the musical style. But the fact is that it was probably their worst selling album at this point, especially where they sold so many albums, which is probably why I found an unopened version. This was the last album they did for Elektra, and it's got a $3.99 price tag on it. And now I didn't pay that. I think I paid 50 cents for it in 1993. But I know that when this retailed in 1982, it wasn't $3.99. So it was a markdown. As a matter of fact, it's got a little delete chip out of it too. But it's unopened, which is kind of cool. So Under Pressure made its official album appearance on here. A song, again, that wasn't that highest charting song. I think it got to number 29 in the US back in the day. Of course, a lot of people my age, unfortunately, first heard it in 1990, and I'm not even going to go into detail as to why, but the bass line made an appearance again. But now it pops up quite a lot, and it's a fantastic song. I just love the song. It started as a random jam session, I think, when Bowie happened to wander into the studio in Munich where they were recording this. And there's another song that there's some other things I do like on here. I mean, the highest charting song off here in its time was Body Language, which is practically club disco.
Yeah.
And the video was banned by MTV. This is when MTV was starting to turn their back. But I do like a fair bit of the songs in here. I mean, Brian May, as usual, can be relied upon to fire off at least one good rocker, which he does with Put Out the Fire. He writes Dancer, which is a funky song, but I like it. I for whatever reason, I think it's really catchy. I like Roger's song on here, Action This Day. I think that's catchy. Really nice tribute. I mean, you, especially as a Beatles fan, they do a really nice tribute to John Lennon, who had only like less than 2 years.
Sounds very psychedelic. Yeah.
Yeah. Called Life is Real. Yeah, I mean, and there's some disco-y stuff on here like Back Chat, but it's all very catchy. It's just, I never listened to Hot Space. Now, because my copy's not open, I'm curious as to what's inside of yours. Yes.
This is the inner sleeve.
That's what the Body Language single looked like. Yeah, that picture on it. Yeah.
And then you got the lyrics on the back.
Yeah.
And the album itself is a custom label again.
Yep. Cool.
And it almost looks like this is just a little thing, but it almost looks like the same font that they used for Sheer Heart Attack on the Queen.
Okay, just a very plain font.
Yeah.
Like no, it totally
reminds me a lot of
it totally is. I never noticed that before.
Yeah, so I thought that was interesting. But I mean, the rap against this album has been it's all clubby, it's disco-y, it's too commercial. But yeah, there's enough Queen stuff that sounds like classic Queen on here that, you know, it's not a wasted buy. If you buy it and then, you know, or I guess I would say don't entirely disregard this if you're a big Queen fan, because there are some Queen sounding songs on here. It's just like the first four. If you can get through those, there are some gems on here that you will enjoy.
Well, I mean, and two, if you're a big enough Queen fan and you've gotten everything else, you might as well get that one too. And chances are you're going to find a copy. It's not going to set you back much.
Right.
That's also the last Queen album that came out on 8-track, is on my 8-track episode in a retail form. However, there's at least one more. And it's this one.
Okay.
that exists on Record Club only. But anyway, this is the vinyl for The Works, which I think came out in February 1984. It came out early 1984.
Yeah.
And this is my favorite Queen album of the 80s. I
Mhm.
really, really like the works. Mine's a Canadian copy. This is the first album they did on Capitol Records, which EMI Records was their record label through most of the world. So it kind of made sense that they signed with them. This is a Canadian Columbia House copy. Mine, there was something sticky was on the back of this when I bought it. So it's got a little bit of damage here.
Okay.
And somebody put, I'm guessing that's their initials that they put up in this space. I'm
Okay.
guessing because this was, actually, I confirm it from your copy, because this is a Columbia House copy, that's probably where the barcode would have been.
Oh yeah, sure.
That's exactly what that is. So yeah, really, really like this album. This is one of the rarest CDs I have too, because I have the original 1984 Capitol version of this on CD. I like the gold on red they use here. Yeah, you don't see this on vinyl that much. This was a little bit folded here, but it's the only copy of it other than a reissue that I've ever been able to find. It's got a custom label on it. Of course, the big hit off of this was Radio Gaga. And as I hinted to earlier, Roger Taylor, that's the Roger Taylor song. Him being the drummer of Queen, wrote it on a drum machine. But it's got some fantastic rock songs on here. Hammer to Fall is just a killer heavy rock song from Brian May. I love
Oh
Tear
yeah.
It Up. That's a lot of fun. I even like Machines, Back to Humans. I like that. That's got a techno side to it, but it's got some heavy parts. I Want to Break Free is another song. It's bigger now than it was back then. A
And that
lot
was
of
a
people know that song.
controversial video, and
Yeah,
they
yeah.
really got roasted over that video.
Imagine back in considering what's out now. We won't even go there. But yeah, really, really like this album. And this also had, and I don't have the single, but the single to Radio Gaga had another fun rock song. Let's let you talk about it since you got it. Yeah.
Yeah, so this is a 12-inch single of Radio Gaga. And side one, it's got an extended version of Radio Gaga. And then on the flip side, it's got a Radio Gaga instrumental. And then there's a track called I Go Crazy.
Yep. Fun rock and roll song, again, written by Brian May. And it's mercifully, it's on the reissued versions. And yeah, okay, so that's interesting. So whereas my Columbia House issue had a custom label, you've got the typical. Oh no, that's the single, right? That's what that's what the regular Capitol releases looked like that weren't custom. They had that rainbow around them.
Yeah, Capitol went back to the rainbow label in the 80s after they experimented with a lime green label and then an orange label and then a purple label. And
that orange label, I don't know, like I've got some Sammy Hagar records that look like that. They look like blank demonstration, like it's very cheap looking. I've seen like looking around records, I've seen Bob Seger records and Steve Miller records. They just look very cheap with that old logo on it. I kind of like the purple one with the crown on it. That's kind of, actually that fits Queen perfectly. But anyway, so a couple years now before the next Queen album comes out, they came out with a single in 1985. One of my favorite rockers, One Vision, from the Iron Eagle soundtrack. And that's also the kickoff song on Kind of Magic. Another one that's not easy to find on original vinyl. What I've got here is a US Columbia House version. And surprisingly, for a late 80s album, this is a gatefold. Now, this, of course, was a big album in the UK, but by now in North America, Queen were kind of they couldn't get arrested. Brian Mays even said that Queen couldn't get arrested in the States at this point, which is really sad. Even though
especially after Live Aid.
Yeah, and even though A Kind of Magic did almost hit the top 40, I think it hit number 42. I know up here in Canada, the video got played on Much Music all the time. It's a very fun video. It's in an old theater. They really went with this almost. I almost want to say Disney. This kind of reminds me of Aladdin. Like
you're right.
But and down to the animated versions of the band members themselves with great big broad shoulders and little tiny waists, and it's fun. I really don't enjoy this album too much, except it does have, unlike Hot Space, to me the songs that stand out on here stand out a lot more. So it's got the lyric sleeve with it and some credits on the back. Cool shot of the band. That is from the video shoot of one of my favorites, Princes of the Universe, which is from actually this album almost doubles as the soundtrack to the first Highlander movie. because A Kind of Magic, One Year of Love, Who Wants to Live Forever, Give Me the Prize, Princes of the Universe, they're all in the Highlander. As a matter of fact, I think Hammer to Fall makes an appearance in that movie at one point. I think it's on a car radio, but
Okay.
But yeah, so those were all great songs. And my record is customized. Yeah. What version have you got there, Jeff?
I've got the reissue.
Okay, so they did kind of keep the same theme, pretty much.
Yeah.
Except mine's on Capitol. And I know they put a lot of singles out from this album. They did have some B-sides on them. Do you have any of those?
I don't. The last single that I had was that Radio Gaga one, but
okay.
Yeah.
So in late 1986, I think it was in December. This is an interesting thing. I've talked about this many times. This is a rare instance of an album coming out in Canada by not a Canadian band that didn't come out in the States. Live Magic. Of course, Queen were as big as they ever were in the UK. The Magic Tour was their most successful. It's when they conquered Wembley. Unfortunately, it was the last tour with Freddie. He got sick. But for some reason, Capitol in Canada opted to put this album out where Capitol in the States did not. So this is a very rare case, and I've never seen this too often. So this is a Canadian version of Live Magic, which is not unique, but it's definitely rare. And it's a great concert. This copy was obviously belonged to a radio station or a record store. It's got a hole punched through it. But again, I'm not going to complain. Look at all those people. That's them flying to Wembley. And
the customized helicopter.
Yeah. Sleeve there, pictures of them on stage. Of course, by now, Freddie had taken to wearing the crown and the ermine. But for the label itself, it's your standard Capitol label. But
okay.
Yeah, and it wasn't until 1996 that I found it on CD, because Hollywood in the States reissued it on CD. I remember being very excited. I saw it at Walmart and I was like, oh, because that was just one of those things I didn't think I'd find on CD.
Mm-hmm.
The next one, I'm just going to guess, might be one we have the same copy of. Maybe.
Miracle?
The Miracle, yeah. Mine's a US Capitol version. It's the last album that Queen did for Capitol. Got maybe my all-time favorite Queen song on it, I Want It All. Yeah, this isn't that easy to find either in its original form. So, just glad to find that. Picture of the band, credits, and all the lyrics. And this one has a customized label on it. Yeah, ours, I would say we got the same copy.
Yeah.
Also in 1989 is when the BBC originally released Queen at the Beeb. I don't have that on record in any form as of yet. They eventually put that out in an expanded version just called On Air. I don't have that either. That's one of those ones that's got 4 records in it. It's really expensive.
Yeah.
But so the final Queen album to come out while Freddie Mercury was still alive came out in, I think, January of 1991.
Yeah, I think you're right.
It was Innuendo. And this is a reissue copy from 2011. And I bought it in Canada, but it says it's made in Germany. It's on Virgin, and I've still got the original HMV price tag on it. HMV in Canada closed up since buying this.
Okay.
So this was a good, a fine album. I don't have a problem with it. But again, 3 songs on each side. There's 12 songs on here. It doesn't need to be on 2 records. I'm sure if I could have found an old UK version that just had 6 songs on each side, like the cassette. But anyway, had to have it. So that was the easiest way. I found it in the store. It was the easiest way to get it. Also in 1991, I think it came out like weeks before Freddie died in November. And this is where the greatest hits story gets complicated. But anyway, this is Queen's Greatest Hits Volume 2. This is actually a Hollywood Records reissue. I bought it like 4 years ago. So it originally came out. Yeah, which is weird because it's got more songs on it.
Mm-hmm.
well, this one actually just is almost justified of being a double album. Maybe it had to be, but I bought this 4 years ago. It's a 2016 reissue on Hollywood. Greatest Hits 2 never came out on Hollywood Records. They opted not to put this out because in early 1991, Hollywood redid all the Queen albums. And most of us that started buying Queen around then, those are the CDs we have. And we talked about that. Most of the distinct majority of the Queen albums I have are on Hollywood. But they put out a compilation called Classic Queen instead, which looks like this. Some of the songs are different, but I mean, you can't go wrong with this. Is basically, it picks up where the first Greatest Hits left off. This one actually does have Under Pressure on it as well. But I mean, this collects Radio Gaga, I Want It All, Kind of Magic, One Vision, The Show Must Go On, The Miracle, Who Wants to Live Forever. Like, they didn't slack. They were still making great music in their second decade as well. So then the next thing, of course, Freddie was recording and writing and trying to get music down right up until he just couldn't anymore. And so the result of all that, I think sometime in October or November of 95, this is the first new Queen album that came out since I became a fan. I was really looking for this one. It was Made in Heaven.
And that came out on vinyl.
Yeah, this is a remastered one from 2015, actually. So it's probably been a couple of years since I bought it. Again, it's 4 sides, doesn't need to be, especially with the last track is 20 minutes of nothing. I never understood that. This album is a curious combination of songs that they were newly working on and songs that had appeared on either Freddie Mercury solo, Roger Taylor's band, The Cross, and Brian May solo. But they put it together as a Queen album. And, if it wasn't for the circumstances behind it, I probably wouldn't enjoy it as much, but it's an affectionate tribute to Freddie. It's got the stamp on the back. So they've got the statue of Freddie. I think this is in Switzerland. And on the back, you've got the 3 remaining members. And if I had this open, it folds out as a gatefold. So it's very poignant.
Made in Heaven, that was actually a track on Freddie's solo album, Mr. Wonderful, wasn't it?
Yeah. So was I Was Born to Love You. And I think You Don't Fool Me, maybe. Heaven for Everyone was The Cross. That was Roger's side project. I think they did 2 albums, maybe 3. And Too Much Love Will Kill You. That was on Brian May's Back to the Light album. Actually, It's a Beautiful Day. The first song on here dates all the way back to 1980 because there's an early version of that on the CD reissue of The Game. So that's how far back that track goes. So, once I knew this was on vinyl, I had to have it. And I haven't got much more. I only have a couple more things, actually. The next thing I've got, for a while there, they were reissuing vintage Queen concerts, which was so cool. And I think my favorite of all of them is this. This is Live at the Rainbow 74. This was originally supposed to come out in its day, like after Sheer Heart Attack, but it didn't. Although I think we've all seen footage from it. Got the classic Queen logo on here. This is on Hollywood Records. This came out in 2014. So this has Live at the Rainbow March 74 and then Live at the Rainbow November 74. So it's got stuff from the Sheer Heart Attack tour and then as far back as the Queen 2 tour, which is awesome because there are live versions of songs here which didn't last past the Sheer Heart Attack because they had so many other songs that were bigger. So you've got Father to Son on here, Ogre Battle, Son and Daughter, Modern Times Rock and Roll, Liar, Flick of the Wrist, March of the Black Queen, Bring Back That Leroy Brown. Like this is, and heavy. Like this is probably Queen at their heaviest. I also have this on CD and DVD, and it's really, really, really good. And the last thing I have is only a couple years old at this point, just over a couple years old. It's the soundtrack to Bohemian Rhapsody, the movie. And this is a double album. It's a double album, 4 sides. It's on Hollywood Records. And, this doubles as both a Queen Greatest Hits album. I love the fact it's got the complete Live 8 performance on here on audio form. And I think it was cool that they redid Doing All Right, which is a song on the first album that dated back to Brian and Roger's days in the band Smile. And they actually got their old bandmate and singer Tim Staffel to re-record it. So there's some cool stuff on here. The movie was awesome. So I had to get this. I got this on cassette, which is kind of cool. and then I got
Yeah.
of course on CD. So that's it. That's my Queen vinyl.
Well, you've got I knew you'd have everything pretty much on vinyl that there was to get.
Well, I
So
wanted to make sure I had at least all the studio albums.
yeah,
But and I, by the way, I've never considered that the Cosmos Rocks, the one they did with Paul Rogers. I've never considered that a Queen album. Look, I love Queen, and I like Bad Company. Paul Rogers, one of the greatest singers of all time. To me, that merger never worked. That never clicked. I never. Adam Lambert's a much better choice if they want someone to go on tour with them and do the Queen material. But that was, I say not fire and water, but oil and water. They just didn't mix. And
yeah, no,
I heard a couple songs off that album, and I thought they were just awful. Like I'm like, you guys are capable of writing. You know, it could have been one of those situations like, this might be an odd comparison, but Motley Crue's album they did with John Corabi on vocals.
hmm
Does it sound like Motley Crue? Not really, but it's a good album. I think it's a
hmm
good album. They could have done something that didn't necessarily sound like Queen, but was still good. Anyway, I've never considered that, and I don't even know if that's on vinyl. But even if it was, I'm not bothered by not having it.
yeah, no, no. I
But
uh, I feel the same way about NXS, their Switch album. Although Matt will try to convince me otherwise that it's
I
actually
see. I actually don't mind that. But
yeah.
you know what? JD Fortune's like, from the Maritimes. He's from our neck of the woods, so that was kind of a big deal. At least he
hmm
sounded more like Michael Hutchence than Paul Rogers sounded like Freddie. But anyway,
Yeah,
that's
maybe I got to give it a chance.
singers are the hardest thing. Once you
Mhm.
get past AC/DC and Van Halen, it's almost impossible to think of bands that succeeded with changing singers. There's
Yeah,
such a
it really is. It didn't work for Foreigner. It didn't work, I mean, it's so many bands you could list off where they couldn't pull it off. But
yeah.
uh,
But they could either or they pulled it off as far as sonically, but the public at large didn't go for it. But the only
right.
other Queen vinyl that I'd like to get, but I don't want to spend an arm and a leg on it, would be the old BBC recordings, because I don't know if you've got that on CD or anything, but they're pretty raw. It's mostly songs from the first album, and I think there's an early version of Ogre Battle. But the on air, I've got the on air CD. It's got some good stuff on it, but this is the vinyl versions of that are just they're too expensive. When you get into it's bad enough when you have a single album made into a double. You get a double album made into a quadruple. It's like you're dropping $100 on something you. Anyway, it's just not worth it.
Yeah, no, no. Well, maybe a future record store day or something, they'll come out with a more affordable version of that. But until
Yeah.
then, yeah. Well, thanks so much, Tim, for joining me and showing your collection. I really had a lot of fun with this, and I know we'll be collaborating in the future. So everybody, thanks for watching and take care.